Good morning, and I'm here primarily to say thank you to all of you. The Lower Cape Outreach Council, as you probably know, has been providing food and clothing and emergency financial assistance to Lower Cape residents for 40 years now. I'm particularly proud of the fact that in the last few years we've started a program called Hope Works, which began strictly as a jobs program. We have 5 counselors that help people with everything from how to write a resume to how to search for work online. We have an 8-station computer lab where our clients can come in any day of the week and spend as much time as they like online looking for work, looking for resources. Through the Virginia Cook Trust, you have helped us this year provide tuition, partial tuition and full tuition to 28 clients so far, for certificate programs to become certified nursing assistants, medical technicians, to firefighters, EMTs, computer training, all sorts of programs, certificate programs, associate degree programs at the college, skill training programs, so that people can get out of $8 to $12 an hour jobs that are unpredictable, that are seasonal, that provide no predictable schedules, and we're moving people one at a time into jobs that are full-time, that have benefits, that have career paths, so that they can afford to keep a roof over their heads and put food on their table. We have more clients right now than we had in the depth of the recession. We're $130,000 over budget already this year because people are struggling so hard. There is no affordable housing and wages on Cape Cod are low. So I thank you because your support through the trust has helped us to do a lot of good this year, and we're very, very grateful. And I'm very grateful because one of our clients, Glynis, has come to speak to you directly about her experience through this program. I turn it over to you.
Good morning, praying friends. Good morning. Thank you so much. It's really good to be here today and to represent the Lower Cape Outreach, a fabulous organization. Last year at this time, I took the 40-hour real estate course to become a licensed Massachusetts salesperson. Oh, I'm sorry. It's better. So last year at this time, I took that 40-hour real estate course at 4 Cs to become a licensed salesperson. The course was offered at the Community College in Barnstable. And that course is part of a workforce development series that was created by the Governor's Office to address lack of training for employers on Cape Cod. And they were receiving a lot of people that didn't have this training. So my background's in the hospitality industry. I work for many inns, hotels, catering, special events, rental homes, all the types of seasonal jobs that we have here on Cape. But right now I'm changing fields to work in real estate again. Along with 25 other students, I studied for the real estate exam and passed that course last year to obtain my salesperson license. Currently, I'm working on a resume for application at the broker's offices in the Mid-Cape area. And I'm working with several people right now as a facilitator, which is something that you can only do if you have your license. And just now I'm connecting the buyers with property owners and properties that are held by the brokers. Last spring, unfortunately, I had a health-related crisis which kept me in a hospital bed and unable to work for several months. I had to learn to walk again too, but God is keeping me for some reason. We just don't know what yet. I had to learn to walk again, and right now I'm working on my resume still while I'm doing a little financial triage after my surgery. So I wanted to thank your group and for sponsoring me to that real estate class They also paid for my textbook, which was awesome. Your grant has introduced me to this new field of real estate. I took an oath to uphold all the laws of property transfer in Massachusetts, and I look forward to engaging with people who will make new chapters in their lives here as our neighbors and friends. Thank you for opening this door through your education grant, and I would like to encourage you to keep doing this for as many individuals as you possibly can. And I hope to find a solid position in a broker's office, and I look forward to learning more about the MLS system and how to present the open house events. The license is in its frame in my house, and this is just the very beginning. I want to thank you for your support of people on Cape who are making this type of transition. Thank you.
Thank you.
We pause each week to light a peace candle and say a few words related to peace. It's a moment of quiet reflection for all of us. When I asked to do the peace candle this week, I thought it would be an easy task. I'd merely look up the definition of the word peace and read it. The more I read, the more I began to realize that peace is more than a word. It is a feeling. It is personal and within. It is powerful and permeates all that we pursue in all aspects of our lives. The more you think about it, the more you realize that it is not simple. Peace is a universal concept of harmonious well-being within oneself. It is a sense of calm, reassurance, relief, safety. How do you define peace? Think about it for a moment. Peace is also freedom from hostile aggression between individuals and groups of people. One must feel at peace within in order to pursue peace with others. It is so essential to all humans that it is the basis for many, if not all, religions. Christians believe Jesus of Nazareth was the Jewish Messiah, and he was called Prince of Peace. The word Islam is derived from the root word salam, which literally means peace. Muslims are called followers of Islam, followers of peace. Buddhists believe that peace can be attained once all suffering ends. This is the central tenet of Buddhist philosophy. Hindu texts contain beautiful passages, and a couple of them I found. May there be peace in the heavens, peace in the atmosphere, peace on the earth. Let there be coolness in the water, healing in the herbs, and peace radiating from the trees. Let there be harmony in the planets, in the stars, and perfection in eternal knowledge. May everything in the universe be at peace. Let peace pervade everywhere at all times. May I experience peace within my own heart. Another Hindu quote, let us not find agreement with our own people, but instead find agreement with people who are strangers to us. Create between us and the strangers a unity of hearts. May we unite in our minds, unite in our purposes, and not fight against the heavenly spirits within us. Shalom is a Hebrew word meaning peace, harmony, wholeness, completeness, prosperity, welfare, and tranquility. A Native American prayer for peace. O great spirit of the ancestors, I raise my pipe to you, to your messengers, the four winds, to our Mother Earth who provides for your children. Give us the wisdom to teach our children to love, to respect, and to be kind to each other so that they may grow with peace in mind. Let us learn to share all the good things you provide for us on this earth. A Cherokee prayer. O Great Spirit, help me always to speak the truth quietly, to listen with an open mind when others speak, and to remember the peace that may be found in silence. An Oglawa Sioux prayer that can never be peace between nations unless it is first known that true peace is within the souls of men. And lastly, and most familiar to all of us, let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as our Father, brothers, all are we. Let me walk with my brother in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow. Take this moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. So, how do you define peace?
The reading this morning is from Luke, chapter 18, verses 9 through 14. It is called the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector. He also told this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and regarded others with contempt. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee, the other a tax collector. The Pharisee, standing by himself, was praying thus: God, I thank you that I am not like other people, thieves, rogues, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give 1/10 of all my income. But the tax collector, standing far off, would not even look up to heaven, but was beating his breast and saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man who went down to his home justified rather than the other, for all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, but all who humble themselves will be exalted.
It's a pleasure to be on this side of the pulpit again. I realized I was never very good at math. I was doing my list in my mind of things, of places I've been, and realized I've actually been in 7 states, not in 6 states. I forgot Massachusetts. Grant, O Lord, that your word may be faithfully proclaimed, your word may be faithfully received, and your word may be faithfully made manifest in your world. How many of you remember Paul Harvey? Wow. Well, for those few of you who don't, Paul Harvey was a radio newscaster. We might call him an anchorman today, but it was on the radio. He broadcast from WGN in Chicago beginning just toward the end of World War II and continued on until he died at the age of 80 in 2009. Every day, he was a source of news for many Americans, including Saturday, when most commentators did not work. And in the course of his programs, he developed something called The Rest of the Story, which eventually evolved into its own separate program and ran for 80 episodes, which have now been compiled into a book by his son. And he would take a particular news item and he would, if you will, tell the backstory of that item, the things that were not normally included in the news report, and often leading to an unexpected revelation of a famous person or event being involved in this particular story. And at the end he would say, and now you have the rest of the story. That phrase is something that we Christians would like to do, is to have the rest of the story. Because if we look at the gospel, if we look at the story of Jesus, who he was, what he did, what he said, we discover that we know that much of a story that is that wide. We don't know the rest of the story. We don't know, for instance, why it took 5 years before his family returned to Nazareth after his birth. We don't really know what happened when, as age 12, he went to the synagogue or to the temple and talked with the chief priests and elders. And I remembered something just yesterday about that. He was 12 years old. He was about to become a bar mitzvah, a son of the Torah, and that changes the entire complexion of that particular story, that he was getting ready for that momentous event in his life. We know nothing of what happened between when he was 13 or 12 years old and whatever age he was when he showed up at the River Jordan to be baptized. We don't know why he showed up at the River Jordan to be baptized. We don't know what happened in the conversation that he had with Moses and Elijah on the Mount of the Transfiguration that led him to come down from that mountain and say, for the first time, I must go to Jerusalem and die. We don't know the rest of the story, and maybe most significantly, we don't know what he actually expected to accomplish in his death. There's a whole lot of stuff that we don't know, but that we can perhaps know if we apply two very important human abilities. One is logic, looking at the material and say, what makes the most sense in this situation about why he did, what he said, who he was. And the other, to fill the blanks in with our imagination. Our logic and our ability to imagine can indeed give us some, at least, if not all, of the rest of the story that is so crucial for us to really know Jesus, know who he was, know what he said, what he did, and why. I want to share two examples of how I think that can work using two of his most familiar parables. The parable of the two sons, normally called the parable of the prodigal son, but that's only really half of the story, and the parable of the Good Samaritan. Now, you know the story of the two sons. The one son asks for his inheritance, and he goes off and he wastes that money, and he finally comes back to his father, and his father welcomes him warmly and offers him a fine coat and a celebratory meal. And his brother, who has remained home, is upset at this and condemns his father for being so generous toward this wayward son. And his father responds, perhaps unconvincingly, "This my son was dead and he's alive again. He was gone and he's come back." That's the story. But where did it come from? Why did he tell that story? And what was his purpose in telling that story? Again, we don't know. But if we apply logic and imagination, we begin to come to an understanding that that story was about Jesus himself. That Jesus, the senior son of Joseph, had been expected to take over the family business when Joseph retired or died. He had been expected to become the leader of the family if Joseph died, and certainly to take care of his widowed mother if Joseph died. And Jesus had done none of those. Indeed, Jesus had left at some point to go his own way, a trip that eventually took him to the River Jordan to be baptized by John. His family, understandably, was not very pleased with him. He wasn't living up to his responsibilities and obligations. And when he comes back, as he does after John is arrested, when he comes back to Nazareth, he proclaims that he's now going to have this marvelous new ministry in the midst of them. And how do they respond? Get off your high horse. You're Jesus, the son of Joseph. Go back to the family business. Take care of your widowed mother. Pay attention to your responsibilities and forget this God nonsense. And the family never stops taking that attitude to Jesus until after his death. Then, interestingly, his brother, very important, his brother John becomes the leader of his community, at least initially. Jesus may well have been telling his own story when he told that particular parable. He may have been saying to his listeners what he had wished had happened when he came home, that he would like to have been welcomed back by the people that he was close to, rather than to be rejected, condemned, and criticized by them. Does that story not take on new meaning and significance when we know the rest of the story? And how about the story of the Good Samaritan? Again, you know the story. This guy is traveling down the road. Robbers attack him, they beat him, they take his money, they leave him for dead. And nobody wants to take care of him or respond to his cries for help until this Samaritan comes down the street, helps him up, binds up his wounds, makes sure that he has a place to sleep that night and food for the next day. And then, to borrow the phrase from the lesson today, he goes home satisfied at the end of the day. Just one question. Why a Samaritan? Why does Jesus choose a Samaritan as to being the hero in this story? After all, the Jews hated the Samaritans. They considered them subhuman beings who had everything wrong. Of course, they had everything right. But the Jews considered Samaritans as being less worthy of being considered a human being. For Jesus to choose a Samaritan isn't necessary for the purposes of the story. The story is being about compassionate toward another person. And he could as easily have chosen a Greek, a Roman, a Gentile, or even another Jew for that story. Why then does he choose a Samaritan, knowing that it's probably going to turn off his listeners? Their prejudice against Samaritans are so strong that they're not about to hear the rest of the message. Why does Jesus choose a Samaritan? This story may, in fact, also be autobiographical. Again, we don't know what happened to Jesus in that period of time between when he was 12 years old and when he shows up at the River Jordan. Is it not possible that this happened to him in the midst of his journeys, that he was beset upon, that he was robbed, that he was beaten and left for dead, and a Samaritan, in fact, did come to his help? That changes the entire nature of that story if we understand it to be about Jesus himself. When we know the rest of the story, which means knowing the parts of the story that we do know and applying our logic and our understanding and our imagination to the parts of the story that we don't know, we can come to a deeper and more profound understanding, and therefore relationship with this itinerant Jewish rabbi. I usually say itinerant obscure Jewish rabbi because I think he was, who we happen to call Lord. And as Paul Harvey would have said at the end of his broadcast, now you know the rest of the story. Good day.